This is the story of an overpowered orphan adventurer who is on a journey to fulfill his obligation. The protagonist introduced himself as Shun and then added that he had been adventuring for the past 5 years. Currently, he was at the West Tunnel, facing furious monsters and using his crossbow to make a living by hunting. Just then, Shun used his crossbow to take down a handful of kobolds, further realizing that the ones he attacked had different colors mixed in. Although Shun had become accustomed to his current lifestyle, there was an obligation that people like him must fulfill in that kingdom. After completing the hunt, he disclosed that the obligation was one of orphans and that his time to depart to execute that obligation was near as well. The scene then turned to a school in another world, where a few male students were discussing a handset game they were playing. The girls, on the other hand, were making fun of their childish behavior and were discussing heading to karaoke. A girl then exclaimed that Kingo and the rest told her that they were already at the karaoke in front of the station to rent a room. As soon as the girl noticed Yua and Yuna, twins, she called for them. Both of them heard and then asked about the reason for the call, so the girl, brewing with hesitation, asked if they would like to go with them to karaoke. However, a girl from behind wondered why she was asking the twins, and as expected, the twins looked at each other and then finally declined the invitation, stating that they had classes to attend. Both of them then ran immediately from there, leaving the other girls exclaiming that both Yu and Yuna were a little strange, and then wondering if it was because they were twins. Even so, karaoke was more important, so they decided to head out together. As the scene turned back to the streets, Shun was seen carrying a bag on his back, feeling all tired since the last 7 days due to the hot weather. His backpack was heavy too, so he realized that he had spent too much time at the hunting ground in the tunnel. While he was debating whether to stop at the guild to drop off his belongings, a herd of horses passed by him, which he wondered might belong to knights. Lendl, one of the men riding horses, was asking everyone to move aside, which was rude enough for the leader among them to ask him not to give attitude to people in town. Lendl agreed, and they passed by. Shun then realized that they were not knights but adventurers. Other people there recognized them as the famous guild Nebula, whose guild master was a female mage. Also, the big swordsman in the front was her husband, and both of them were quite talented. In the conversation, another man wanted to become an adventurer and make a guild with his guild wife. However, the others laughed off his talk, stating that he did not stand a chance at all. Shun heard it all but felt that the party had a guy who seemed like a moron. Finally, he arrived at the guild gate, knowing that usually adventurers' guilds would buy hunting prizes. As he entered the guild, chatter was all around. Adventurers were discussing different requests and realizing that free hunting was truly tough, as there were no good monsters on the plain. In reality, the West Tunnel was crawling with dangerous monsters, so none of them were going there, thinking that if they did not have at least a party of 4 or more, they would surely die. Shun ignored the talk and then, after searching the exchange counter, found a huge line in front of it. While he was waiting like others in the line, someone came from behind, again asking people in front to get out of his way. While others were hesitating to stop that man from advancing ahead in line, Shun, feeling pissed, called out to him. As that filthy Lendl turned, Shun instructed him that the end of the line was behind him. Lendl asked him to repeat the talk, so Shun repeated the instruction that the end of the line was behind him. That reconfirmation was enough to make Lendl lose his control, and when he was about to attack Shun, Shun predicted the attack and took it head-on. It was a powerful hit, and Shun was sent flying against a wall with great impact. He was not moving for a while, so everyone wondered if that man had died. Somehow, Lendl got scared too, and while shivering, introduced himself as part of Nebula. Other members of his guild arrived there too, searching for him, and then repeated the question about whether he had killed someone. The captain wondered too, thinking about where he went when they were tying the horses. Just then, a man arrived and asked the captain to hold up for a second. In the blink of an eye, that old man punched Lendl right in the gut, leaving him in extreme pain. He was the guild master who asked that filthy Lendl not to look down on his guild. Captain Kai of Nebula also apologized for his act. The old man accepted her apology and then wondered if that kid was still alive. As expected of a protagonist, the boy stood up again after taking that fierce punch. Shun recognized the old man as Yahello and then bowed in front of him for a long time, as it had been a while since they met. Yahello was happy too to meet him and then clarified that the hit was strong enough to kill, so he instructed him not to play dead and freak out people. Shun immediately replied that if he could not win against the opponent with strength, then he must win against them with tactics, further reminding that it was what the old man himself had taught him. Yahello was stunned by his elaboration and then just giggled at his condition. He then patted Shun's head while making fun of his skinny body, and then asked if he had been eating properly. Shun replied positively, and soon his chance arrived in the line at the exchange counter. Shun then took his leave and met with the receptionist named Cammy. She was happy to see Shun there after a long time and then praised him for always bringing so much. For that day, he had brought kobold fangs and ogre parts too. As soon as Kai heard of the ogre parts, Shun was under his attention. The items further included jewels, magic stones, and gems from the kobolds. As Shun was then going for the evaluation, Cammy decided to keep guard and further asked if he could bring all the materials to the warehouse for evaluation. Shun agreed and then left from there, while Cammy also asked him to eat properly with the money he earned. After a while, he was in the warehouse in front of Mito, who wondered to see the skinny boy still alive. That old man also asked Shun if he was eating properly. Shun replied positively while asking him to evaluate some goods for him. At first, Mito recognized that the wolf fangs were mixed in there and then finally found a hybrid kobold fang that looked completely different. On further evaluation, an ogre fang was also found to be hybrid, so Mito asked him about the appearance of the ogre. Shun disclosed that it was light brown with white stripes. In an instant, Mito clarified that it would be a monarch for sure. Shun was not able to understand the monarch thing, so he clarified that the one he caught was a young one, not an adult. Mito laughed at his clarification and told him that it was completely fine as long as it was an ogre. It did not matter whether it was young or an adult. Shun's work was complete there too, so he took his leave from Mito. While moving forward, he realized that ogre fangs were really valuable, and all he was left with then was about the payment. After a while, he interacted with Yahello, who was shocked to see the list and then snatched it to have a look. Shun was not able to understand the reason, so Yahello, while sighing in relief, stated that a light brown with white stripes hybrid ogre was definitely a queen and then further inquired when he had caught it. The protagonist thought of it and then replied that it was before he went to the tunnel, so it came out to be 9 days ago. Kai, the captain, was shocked to know that a young boy like him caught it, and the most astounding thing was that he did it alone without even a party. Yahello then grabbed Shun by his neck and asked the others not to underestimate the boy, as Shun had been trained by Yahello himself from a very young age, and further told them that moreover, Shun was an apostle of Nightfall too. The priest of the party was completely shocked to hear that, and then wondered if he was an assassin. However, another man from there denied it, and then clarified that it was a generic name to call people who had learned the skill. The priest apologized and then realized that being an apostle of Nightfall was indeed very suitable for hunting alone. In the midst of all this, Shun was still caught by Yahello, so he again asked the old man if he could go on. Yahello giggled and then replied positively to it, with an apology for holding him back. As Shun was about to leave, Yahello again asked him about leaving for the task while suggesting he meet Anna before leaving for it. Shun was heading to meet her only, and he then left. Yahello then asked the members of Nebula to get inside and talk about the request for a subjugation team regarding the Ogre King's appearance. Kai was ready for it, but asked why they could not take Shun along with them, as he was the one who took down the queen. Yahello was not interested, so he asked Kai if that queen's appearance was his fault, further explaining that Shun just happened to encounter and kill a unique ogre, and that was all. Deep inside, Yahello knew that Shun's intuition had always been sharp and then informed them that he would also join that subjugation, as that boy was not free due to his obligation to execute the obligation of orphans soon. Actually, Shun was an orphan who was found in the woods by Yahello when he was 3 years old. From then until he could live on his own, at the age of 13, the one who raised him was Anna. Shun arrived at a house and then screamed out to ask if Anna was there. A furious lady came out there asking who was being noisy. However, her character immediately changed when she found it to be Shun. Anna then started hugging him even harder while Shun was continuously telling her that he was being hurt. That hug made Anna realize something, however, before she could even speak, the protagonist clarified himself that he did eat properly. Both of them then went to their task, and Anna asked him if Yahello told him to come there. Shun replied positively, stating that he had not stopped anywhere else in the town besides the guild and her place. Shun was raised by Anna in that house up until he was 13, and he learned blacksmithing from Anna and hunting from Yahello. The old lady then asked the protagonist if it was not normal to have a family by 16, and then further asked if he did not even get 1 or 2 girls in the town interested in him. Shun replied that it was impossible, as he only returned to the town once every few months. For information, Anna told him that she had heard that 60% of people who signed up to be adventurers at the guild were female, as due to the previous war and the increase in monsters, the number of men had been decreasing, and the number of girls coming there to make armor was increasing. That explanation was just to make him think about being better teamed up with a girl. On the contrary, Shun thought that it would be troublesome to team up with someone of the opposite sex, as they would have to sleep together in the mountains or inside the tunnels, and they would also have to be careful when changing clothes or using the restroom. Actually, Nebula had both men and women then, but probably they had only men in the past. Shun had one more reason. If it was not someone of the opposite sex, then being alone was still comfortable. Anna sighed at his explanation and then wondered why it was comfortable being alone, as it was not something that a kid of his age would say so bluntly. As time passed, the protagonist went into a hot water bath and was enjoying it to the fullest. Anna realized that he loved baths the most, so Shun told her that not being able to bathe was probably the worst thing since he started to live on his own. For that reason, Anna told him that it would be much better if he came there more often. Shun was about to tell the reason behind not coming, but Anna understood before he could that his obligation as an orphan was still due. There were children with unknown blood ties or who had lost their blood ties, so in that kingdom such children would live a minimal life. They were provided with one ticket for a free meal per day and received periodic supplies of old clothes. In return for all that, the orphans had to fulfill an obligation before they turned 16. First, they would have to attend the audition, which was held by the kingdom to qualify as a seeker, and then they would stay isolated in the labyrinth city for 3 years. After 3 years, a lot of people would remain in the labyrinth and make a living by getting hired by merchants to collect materials. Shun wondered what kind of place the labyrinth was. Only orphans were not the only seekers in the labyrinth. Anna replied to Shun's question that she had heard it was a playground made by God, where kids like him get pulled in from somewhere. As per the sayings, once every few years, God would throw an outsider into that world. They would be assigned a mission by God and would only get out of the labyrinth after they had completed the mission. This time, Shun wondered where the outsiders came from. As per the sayings, they would also be provided with special powers too. All that was of no means, as they had no choice other than executing the obligation for 3 years. Anna then told Shun that he could just hide in the mountains if he wanted, as if he hid there with serious intent, only someone with the same level as Yahello could find him. Shun was surprised to hear that, but then he asked her, mom-like, if she would make him a good armor as there was no one he could ask besides her. Anna sighed in relief and then turned to him to ask if he had enough money to request armor from her. All Shun did was smile at her cute face, and Anna further added that she would allow him any discount even if he was family. The day of executing the obligation finally arrived, and everyone was there to see off Shun. Yahello saw his armor and praised it for the craftsmanship, to which Anna accepted with complete pride. Mito started evaluating the armor that the beetle powder was thoroughly mixed with the fibers. However, before he could even tell the market price of it, Kami asked him to stop with the evaluation. Firstly, Yahello gave his parting gift, which was a small knife, and he asked him to keep it with him always. Second in line was Kami, who offered him an amulet, explaining that the monsters were not the only thing that was dangerous. Mito then took his chance to give him a peeling knife while again asking for permission to evaluate it. It was an emotional gesture, so Shun thanked everyone for everything. Anna then got close to him, like a mother, and told him that even though he said it was more comfortable to be alone, she asked if it was not like he had not met the right person, whether it be a girl or a comrade. She knew that he would understand it one day and then hugged him with pure feelings, asking him not to die before them. The protagonist too loved that hug and then, while calling her mom, told her that he would be leaving for them. As the scene switched, Yua and Yuna were seen teasing their mother, stating that they hated her. However, after taking a few steps when they started the conversation, both twins realized that they were the ones at fault in the fight with their mom. It did not matter to them, so they decided to head on from there and apologize to their mother once they came back from school. On the other hand, the protagonist was already on his way, and it seemed like he was being trailed by an unknown man. That man was frustrated, wondering when he would stop, and it had already been 3 hours since he left the town. That filthy man's intention was to take him down, but he knew that he could not do that if the protagonist continued at that speed. Suddenly, Shun vanished from his sight in a blink, leaving that man in shock. It turned out that it was the same man from the guild, named Lendl, who was confused about where the hell the protagonist had gone. Just then, something bit the man's neck, and upon further investigation, it turned out to be a snake that made its escape soon after completing its task. Lendl tried to search for the antidote, but he had already lost it in commotion, which was impossible for him to recover. He was crawling on his four limbs, and then the protagonist, Shun, arrived close to him to tell the man that he was wondering who was tailing him, but was disappointed to find out that it was him. Lendl could not believe that he knew about it, and then further wondered how he could win against him. Lendl's suffering was ignored by the protagonist, who then turned and went on his way to the labyrinth. After walking to the next town and spending another 3 months continuously traveling by ship and horse-drawn carriage, the writer informed Shun about their arrival at the labyrinth city. Shun was confused to see what was in front of him. The towering labyrinths of the gods stood in the middle of the plain. It was something thriving around the shrine. Adjacent to the barrier was the labyrinth city. To him, the tower looked huge, as from that distance the city looked like a small village. As he entered the city, and being a person who hated crowds, Shun found the city to be certainly lively with a lot of people. It was definitely bigger than Jinald, where he had grown up. Another thing to notice was that monster materials were casually being sold like other normal clothes and food, which was quite abnormal for him. Shun then went to a shop, and after looking at the goods, he wondered if those were from the labyrinth city. The shopkeeper replied positively, further clarifying that more valuable things were moved to certain places, so the items in her shop were not particularly rare. That clarification made the protagonist realize that maybe the labyrinth was a pretty good hunting ground. The shopkeeper then asked him to get a closer look, but he declined, stating that he had auditions to attend. This was something the shopkeeper had not thought of. Due to his skinny and small body, she guessed that he might be 14 and expressed awe at his composure. Once again, the shopkeeper praised him to keep his morale high even if he got disqualified, and reminded him to eat properly. When Shun left, he felt that the lady from before was a bit like Anna, but she was about 5 times smaller than her. He also felt that it would be better if he were disqualified, with Anna being the only reason for that. Continuously during the tests and everything, he was thinking about being disqualified, but destiny had something written, so he passed on the first try. Everyone there felt that the test was a little too easy. Members of the hosting team then guided the past members to a certain place. At that location, the organizer asked if everyone had their equipment, and then decided to explain the rules of the labyrinth. Another man asked the students who could read the rules to read them carefully. Shun also received a book, and after opening it, he felt that he could read it but was confused by the technical terms, as he could not understand anything. Another man read that various statuses would be increased depending upon the experience points obtained by killing monsters. The priest then told them that there was a reason for this, as these terms were unique to the outsiders. The priest further added that the information in that book was from an outsider who had reached the required level and escaped the labyrinth. The man then asked them to follow him and entered a long corridor. One of them, being curious, asked where they were going. The priest told them that soon the outsider would be summoned and given their mission. It was then that they would also be entering the labyrinth. Another man asked what the outsider was like. The priest replied that they were summoned into that world by the god and were endowed with unique weapons and magic, which was called the god's blessings. Furthermore, their average age was 15, which was the reason for the audition being for 16-year-old orphans. Shun knew this from the start due to the rumors he had heard. The priest also told them that they did not know much about the labyrinth or the outsiders, and gave an example that the skills obtained by mastering weapons described in the book were completely different from the weapon techniques known in that world, such as a fireball shot from a sword or a film of light as hard as steel covering the body. Shun liked that he too would soon be able to shoot fire with his sword, but he felt that he could understand the basics through the way of fighting. The priest then concluded that things such as the conditions to learn such skills were still not figured out. He then grabbed the attention of the orphans to tell them that if they could survive in the labyrinth, then maybe in the future they could find the answer to it by themselves. As they were approaching the gate, something seemed very strange regarding the sound of footsteps and the flow of the air. The priest finally arrived at a gate and told them that beyond it was the sanctuary. He asked them to enter with a good heart while reminding them that the god was very playful. As soon as Shun entered, he felt lost in the darkness with no one around. Slowly he opened his eyes and realized that he was trapped, as he could not feel the others anymore. There was no light, no sound, only darkness. There he remembered Ileto's words that humans were instinctively afraid of the dark, but the darkness was the domain of the hunters. He took out his sword and remembered how in the dark forest there was neither moon nor stars in the sky. Deciding to keep himself calm, he continued in the dark. Yahello had also taught him that by continuing to feel his body and believing it was there, he would be able to endure not hearing and seeing anything. Shun remembered this and realized that there was still more. There were 3 ways to become something: a tree, flowing water, or a stone. However, the protagonist decided to become the nature of shadow, with an intention of timelessness. Suddenly, he felt that the darkness was about to disappear, and it did in the blink of an eye. When he opened his eyes, he saw a little boy looking at him from upside down, informing him to be there. The little boy, full of enthusiasm, told Shun that he was very cool. The kid then asked if Shun thought he was a god or something. Shun understood the task and replied with a summary that the previous task was the god's final plan to see if they were qualified to become a seeker or not, and the audition was that easy for that reason. The kid exclaimed that Shun was right and told him that he was the first kid from the audition to clear the labyrinth of darkness, as most of the kids went crazy during that time. Shun remembered the 3 people who came with him and that the god had let one of them go after healing him. The god found that man a strange child and asked if he could look at his memories, as it was faster than listening to the story Shun was about to tell. When the kid was about to touch him, Shun remembered that the process was not painful, but a bit uncomfortable. Instantly, the kid's expression changed, and he told Shun that it might be more interesting to let him join the next summoning. The reason was that the kids who were kidnapped and brought to another world died very quickly, but it was no fault of the monsters. Shun asked if the monsters in the labyrinth were that strong. The kid nodded in agreement, saying it would not be interesting otherwise. Shun remembered from earlier that some children were trying to raise their levels on the upper floors and asked if getting out was more difficult. The kid ignored the question and continued that the roulette wheel spins when the monsters repopulate, so he was determined to make stronger monsters appear with a low probability. On the other hand, Shun could not understand the kid's words. For that reason, the kid summarized that on the upper floors, the monsters were weak, and on the deeper floors, strong monsters would appear. Shun realized that if that was the case, it was pretty much the same as the tunnels he used to go down. Not only that, but he also realized that since the god had changed the mechanism of the labyrinth, making it more likely to encounter monsters even on the upper floors, they could not keep hunting weak monsters safely anymore. The kid praised Shun's comprehension, and then Shun confirmed if anyone had reached level 25 without staying on the upper floors forever. The kid replied positively, further clarifying that the conditions were harsh and the availability of means to fight against strong monsters was crucial. Shun had everything he wanted, and he felt that if that was the case, he had no reason to despair. The kid was done with the preparations and decided to give him a reward for clearing the labyrinth of darkness and joining the summoning of outsiders. The kid gave him a chance for further questions, so Shun took the opportunity and asked about the crimes in the labyrinth and if human conflicts would be judged. His question was because many boys and girls of the same age would be sent in, and there was no way that nothing would happen. The kid was stunned by this question and found the protagonist really interesting. The answer was that actions taken to strengthen oneself would not be judged, and killing people could also increase your level. So in short, murder would not be a crime. However, theft or insults were crimes, as those actions did not increase their levels. In actuality, there were many types of crimes, so the kid asked him to try by himself to see what kind of punishment he would get. Shun immediately declined. The kid further clarified that attacks between humans would be cut down by 80% among party members. Shun read this and wondered what the 80% referred to, or if it was about the number of arrows. It was not likely that the kid would disclose everything, so he told Shun not to worry and remember that if it actually happened, he would survive. The kid's enthusiasm was high, and he decided to send Shun to the labyrinth and pick up the kids from the other world. Before heading out, he handed Shun the reward for clearing the labyrinth of darkness. That reward was officially going to be registered as Shun's when his qualification was granted. The kid then reassured him that he would understand how to use it at that time. Shun thanked him for the reward and was about to lose consciousness. The next second, when he opened his eyes, he was in a strange cube room. It was surprising, and Shun realized that they were the outsiders. In that class, there were about 30 people. They should have been of the same age, but there were many who looked similar. Only a few had a strong physique, while the others looked like 11 or 12-year-old kids. Yua and Yuna gazed at the protagonist, as the boy and the girl who would become the heaven-sent apocalypse and the saintess in the future were not aware of it being their meeting. Out of the blue, mobiles of every student in the class started ringing at once. Everyone was totally confused, and then, out of nowhere, that little kid, who proclaimed to be a god, came out of their mobile phones and entered the class. He told everyone that it was time to be reincarnated into another world. The god was too enthusiastic, so he dropped a roulette in the middle of the class, displaying it with proper attitude. Shun found it a little bit violent. As everyone was still confused, the god clarified that it was not a dream or a prank. They should be sure they were going to another world, as from that day his labyrinth was going to be their new home. The little kid was not listening to anyone and continued to exclaim their happiness, asking them to keep quiet to hear something interesting. Shun could not understand what the other worlders were discussing, but he realized that those were not happy faces. Finally, the god started the discussion, telling them about 3 things: cheat skills, cheat magic, and cheat weapons. This clarification made everyone quiet for once. Shun could not understand any of it, so the god then explained that he was going to give every good boy and girl 3 things. The first book was a weapon book for guns that could shoot projectiles. The second was a magic book, which included offensive and recovery magic. The third was a weapon book for swords, which would include all kinds of swords. In the end, he told them to choose one of each, but the contents of the books would be different for each person. He decided to hold a lottery for the weapon book of guns. To do so, he took out orbs of souls from everyone and put them into a spinning disc. As soon as they were rolled in the roulette, the designated ones received their weapon books. Shun received one too and realized it must be his reward for clearing the labyrinth of darkness. The little kid then explained that the books were connected to their souls, so they could not be given to others or stolen, and they would not be redrawing the lottery. God believed everyone had gotten their books, so he proceeded to the second book of swords. Suddenly, one of the classmates started arguing with the god, and Shun realized that they were probably dissatisfied with the book's contents. The little kid did not like it and then repeated to that student that they were not going to start over again. That student was stubborn, so in the end, the god lost his temper, and out of nowhere, the boy's book vanished. As soon as it happened, the poor student felt a lightning sensation in his body and then collapsed. He did not move even an inch after that miserable fall. When one of the students checked his pulse, the god told them that they could not steal other people's books, as it was meant to keep others cautious. The most frightening thing was that the kids were going to die for real. Students were terrified, but the god, being enthusiastic, asked them to move on to the next weapon book of swords. When the roulette game ended, Shun realized that these were the 3 special powers, and somehow he ended up getting all of them. Yet he was confused about what the gun was. God clarified that a gun makes gunpowder explode and shoots metal bullets, and whether it hits or misses would depend on the individual skills, yet the power was fixed. Further, the power of the gun would not change even if they leveled up. However, no matter how strong the enemy was, a bullet would at least deliver 1 point of damage. The minimum amount of 100 points would be valid for 100 shots, and the same with 1,000 points would give 1,000 shots. God further explained that shooting or loading bullets would consume magic power, and their magic power goes up depending on their level. Shun could not grasp all that, as it was a lot of technical information at once, so he decided to read the labyrinth rules later. For now, he understood that the gun was a system like a bow or crossbow, and he was happy that he would be good with it as hunting was his specialty. In the end, a session of answers to frequently asked questions was held, which clarified that there would be no abilities like appraisal, stealing, copying opponents' abilities, or magic to enslave others. Once someone is dead in the labyrinth, they would not be resurrected. Also, infinite space magic for storage did not exist either, but there were magical items with the same ability. After the session, the god distributed the space magic circles containing their magic, which was convenient as they could place the sticker wherever they liked, like a tattoo. Once again, Shun was confused, so the kid informed him that the 3 pieces were the bonus he received for clearing the labyrinth of darkness. He was also told that kids from the other world loved that, so he should keep a hold of it to understand its importance. Everything was complete, and it was time for their exploration of the labyrinth to begin. The kid further told them that in the labyrinth, they would receive generous rewards for clearing floors, completing quests, and so on. He asked them to enjoy labyrinth life and survive. Furthermore, the larger the team, the greater the chances of survival. He urged them to work together, as effort and friendship would matter there. The god was too enthusiastic to see who would survive the longest. A bright light appeared, and everyone was teleported to a different location. When they opened their eyes, every single one of them wondered where they were and where the so-called god had disappeared. Yet there was disbelief that this was reality. Suddenly, the protagonist was also able to understand what others were talking about. It was understandable that the god was behind all this to give the kids the ability to speak their language. As soon as the others noticed the protagonist among themselves, they asked about his identification and wondered if he was a messenger of the god. Shun denied it, and after hearing about something coming, he asked everyone to be on guard. The protagonist's intuition was sharp as always, so as soon as a shadow appeared, targeting some of the students, Shun ran and sliced down the threat with a single swing of his sword. Shun was quick, however it was not enough, as a bunch of them were already there, attacking other students. Those were the sticky figures. Even if the protagonist cut them across the body, they returned to the way they were. Understanding this, he decided to deliver a blow to the neck, and then realized that the blow to the neck really worked. However, it was not the only issue, as the outsiders were barely moving. Some of them were quite agile but not very strong, and even those with good physiques were not used to fighting. In order to keep things under control, Shun screamed out to tell them to calm down and aim for their throats. The battle continued for a while, and soon it was all over. Everyone was relieved that it was over and then wondered about the protagonist, as he was the one who took out most of them by himself. An old man appeared suddenly among them, and then realized that it was the god's mischief once again. That didn't matter. He welcomed everyone to the labyrinth, and further told them that the place was inside the labyrinth boundary. He pointed to a location from where the beginner village continued, with inns and material stores there as well. Another thing to keep in mind was that it was the god's labyrinth, so they had to stay in that area and get used to fighting. Yua and Yuna spoke up in the middle to tell the old man that they had no money to stay in the inn. The old man replied positively, further clarifying that if they hunted monsters in that area, they would probably drop something. By selling that to the material store, they should have enough to pay the rent. The protagonist was not paying any attention to that silly talk and decided to head on by himself to understand the rules as he had planned. He looked at different kinds of guns in the book and then realized that the explanation was too short, so he was not able to understand it. Shun felt that he would learn once he used it, so there was nothing to worry about. For the first collection, he thought of using the VSS. As a text suddenly appeared, he clicked on yes, and the gun materialized out of thin air. Shun chose it because of the silencer feature, as it suited his fighting style. The gun was really cool for Shun. As soon as he received it, the basic usage also popped into his head. Shun followed the process as explained, and then loaded the ammo to complete the registration. A stat screen appeared out of nowhere, and the words on it were the same technical terms written in the labyrinth rules. After a good look, he realized they were the specs of his own. The childish nature of the 16-year-old kid remained as he tried to play with a screen in thin air. After some time, he decided to move on to the swords. The swords category included kunai, bundo kuzeri, three-point shuriken, makibishi, and tekokagi. Shun had never seen them before, however he decided to move on, as Shun already had some sorts of swords and small knives. The registration for that was also complete. It was finally time for the magic book, and Shun hoped for some healing magic to be there. As expected, Shun's expectation was again shattered, as it only included summoning magic. At first he was not able to understand what it was for, as all he could think of was moles, weasels, or salamanders. Only the thing named horse was useful, as at least he could ride it. The registration for that book was also completed. The only thing left was the stickers, which he had to put on himself to understand how to use them. Shun had 3 of them, so it was his treasury. They included ear guards, which protected the ears from things like shockwaves, an eye guard, which protected the eyes from things like light rays, and a third one, which was a toilet, confusing even Shun. When he clicked on it and used it, a sudden gate appeared. Shun entered it, closed it, used it, and then came out all confused. Something like that was quite convenient, but when Shun remembered the scenes from inside, he found that he did not know how to use it at first. Finally, the protagonist was done with enough preparation, so it was time for him to start stretching his body. Firstly, Shun was going to try that out and get some money for the inn for the night. Time for hunting that day. Actually, the battle inside the labyrinth's boundary was slightly different from the outside world. In his first shot, he hit a target, and it was disclosed that if they hit the target in the air, numbers would appear. The prey, after being defeated, would disappear and something would fall out of it. The numbers indicated the damage points, and the things that fell out were the drop items. Items included fur and stone, which were fine. Shun was not too happy with the act, as he was someone who loved dismantling, which was the pleasure of hunting. He was not having that here, so those were the drawbacks, but still, generally, hunting in the labyrinth was pleasant, as it was better than the outside world in some ways. Shun felt that unlike a bow or a crossbow, bullets were automatically loaded, and just chanting would make the weapons disappear on their own. During the hunt, the protagonist realized that one shot costs 10 magic power, and one reload costs 5 MP. Apart from that, MP needs about 3 seconds to be restored, and so does HP. Shun was excited and was thinking of trying the swords and magic too. However, he realized that it was the end of the day, so he should get back to the inn and rest for now. Shun then went to the inn but was informed by the lady there that they were full. When he asked for an explanation, the lady pointed his attention towards a lot of people and told him that there were so many outsiders coming that day. Shun realized he was late. The lady offered him the idea to share a room, but the protagonist was only there for that day, so he decided to leave. It could not be helped. For him, instead of sharing a room with a group of outsiders, camping outside was a much better option. On his way back, Shun recalled all the conversations. He realized that the damage points and item drops were technical terms from the outsiders, so the gun must also be something used in the other world. Even so, Shun felt that they were not familiar with the monsters at all, which was quite strange. Suddenly, he saw something moving in the bushes and wondered if it was one of those sticky beings from before. He could not understand what to do, as in his remarks it might be several times stronger than the prey he encountered in the morning. Actually, Shun also wanted to fight some strong monsters to get used to the gun, so he summoned the gun to go on a surprise attack. However, as soon as Shun took up his guard, he felt a different sensation. Upon better inspection, it was revealed that the protagonist was under the huge shadow of a monster he was not familiar with. Moreover, he could not even move an inch. The huge claw of that monster was right on him. Even for the protagonist, it was a giant bird, and he could tell that at his current level, beating it was quite impossible. For the same reason, all Shun could do was run away. As the sun rose, Shun was seen sleeping and then got up suddenly when someone called out to him. It was the inn lady from before, and Shun thanked her for letting him sleep in the storage room last night. The lady took the appreciation and then again told him that she was really surprised when he came back the previous day. Shun then remembered that the previous day, right in front of him, that giant bird grabbed the sticky figure in a flash. It was then that he took the chance and sneaked away after being lucky. While getting ready, Shun felt that he would eventually die if he only relied on his luck. It was the rule of the labyrinth, and monsters lived by that way too. He knew that he needed to know more. With that thought, Shun went out into the forest and then thought of practicing with the Bundokuseri. The protagonist was not well trained, and so he ended up hitting himself on the head. In different attempts, he was stuck at different body parts, and all of them were painful. That made Shun realize that if he did not practice more, he would actually die. For the second thing, he tried summoning the water horse and was confused. The horse was excited as it should be, and within 1 minute, the protagonist had taken a morning bath again. Shun was not able to ride it, and to make matters worse, his MP decreased by 100 points. Shun was getting used to the guns. The time came for the briefing session on the lower floors of the labyrinth held by the old man of the temple. Shun decided to attend it for the payment he had made. The old man then added that for each weapon and magic, a skill level was set. As their skill reached a certain level, they could acquire unique magic and skills too. However, on the contrary, those skills would not be displayed on the left of their hand, so they must be careful. One of the students found it to be a hidden parameter, and the other asked if there was a skill map for those techniques and magics. The old man replied negatively, and once again, Shun was left in awe with that technical jargon. For him, it was expected that the outsiders were strangely knowledgeable about that world. Apart from that, there was a portal every 5 floors, and the portal was always guarded by monsters. There would also be a scale of merits and demerits, recording each merit and crime every 5 floors. In short, the elder's lecture contained a lot of information. In the end, the old man told them that in the plain area, their levels would not increase more, so the old man suggested that those who thought they were fully prepared should start then and go on to the 5th floor alone. Students understood that it was best to get into the tower and level up, so for that, the old man suggested they have a party there. Shun thought about it and was again confused. The old man's lecture ended there, and he told them that they had prepared a list of monsters from the 1st to the 3rd floors for those who needed it. Once again, that was not free as expected. Within seconds, Shun felt a different sensation, and when he inspected it, he felt that there was something strangely uncomfortable. As Shun walked outside, he found the god's labyrinth tower locked. It was so big that one might think it was very close to the beginner village, but it really takes 3 hours to go north from the village to get to the entrance. Shun arrived there finally and found it pretty huge, as it was one of the god's best creations. He was determined to spend the 3 years there, whether crying or laughing. Shun also found out that fog surrounded the top of the tower, and nothing could be seen there, so there was no need to rush things. At that time, he decided to set a goal for the month according to the list of monsters he bought from the elder. However, before that, Shun was thinking of hunting down all the monsters that could be hunted in the plain area, as the things he needed to do there were no different from when he lived outside. During his hunting, Shun found that the VSS was good, as sometimes CP was displayed and the damage point was nearly 10 times higher, which meant that he could hit the target's weak point with ease. In any case, the corpse of the monster was going to disappear, and so the protagonist was wondering what would happen once he used the weapon he bought from the outside. Even so, nothing changed, and Shun realized that he had to give up on dissecting the prey there. Shun continued his adventure and was left in complete surprise when the fish he hit with one of the sword weapons did not disappear. It took Shun a little time to understand, but even so, Shun tried to use the gun on it once. His experiment showed him that if he used a gun, there was nothing left but fish scales and rocks. Things were different to understand there, so he decided to give up on the mystery and focus on the first intact prey then. Shun was hungry, so he used that prey to fry it into a good dish. As he tried the cooked fish, he found it to have a truly delicious smell. Shun was enjoying the feast, however, it did not end well, as soon he had to go for a poop. Luck was on his side with the toilet availability, and as soon as Shun used it, he found it to be good that he had the facility. It was time for him to go back, but his discovery of the corpse being intact was good for him. Shun wondered if it was the Bundo Kuzeri's ability or something else, but he was still not completely sure. That discovery was also something that encouraged him to practice with that weapon, as earlier he was demotivated by the session he had. Finally, after a long practice, the protagonist was able to swing it well and could take down prey with its attack. This time he had its monster body intact. However, whenever Shun caught his target with the Bundo Kuzeri, there was a chance that the body would remain, and the body would still disappear sometimes. In his process of dismantling the monster, Shun knew that the liver could be used to make good medicinal ingredients. However, if the body disappeared, only its fur would remain. It might be his imagination, but Shun felt that the probability of receiving intact corpses was increasing. Nothing was displayed on the screen about it, yet the boy had a feeling about it. The protagonist then believed that it was a good choice that instead of rushing into the tower, he still had a lot to do there. Once again, the protagonist felt a different sensation, as if eyes were on him, and then wondered who that was. Finally, those glittering eyes were revealed to be those of the twins, Yua and Yuna. Post-identification, Shun realized that it was not them, and then it must be that he was being judged instead. Suddenly, his status popped up with a question about whether he would like to accept the invitation to join the party of Kengo Mano. At first, he was not able to recognize that anime and then wondered about the party invitation. Shun remembered the sayings of the others about forming a party if they wanted to go on to the higher floors. God also suggested to him that the more people their party had, the higher the chances of survival were. Even Shun knew that the labyrinth rules were based on the party, so as per his imagination, he too had to join a party with others soon. With all that thought, he ended up declining the invitation on the contrary. For him, it was not the time, and the second reason was that the person was a stranger. Shun knew that there was a chance that he would have to team up with outsiders, as he would not be able to avoid it forever just because he disliked it. Shun was about to leave the place with that day's harvest, but he thought of having a look to check what those two girls were doing. However, when he turned back, they had already disappeared. The protagonist felt that the outsiders were surely hard to understand and then left for the inn for that day. Back at the inn, a group of students came to him and then started asking, while screaming, if he was so unreasonable and cheeky for a young boy. Kengo was the leader there who told Shun that he invited him to the party after feeling pity on him and then asked why he ended up denying it. It was both unacceptable and unbelievable for them. Shun also realized that the eyes he saw were of that man. Kengo, then being more reluctant, asked if he had denied the request by mistake. However, before that man could even complete, Shun slammed the door in his face and then lay on his bed. They kept asking him to open the gate and further asked what kind of attitude he was bearing. Shun, on the other hand, was just thinking of taking a rest as he was there just after the warehouse. He kept ignoring them and then ended up thinking all about the party being a hassle. In one corner of the inn, those two twins were still convincing each other to do their best and be fine together. Time lapsed and Shun again went hunting to increase his level. Again and again, he was getting pop-ups on his screen for joining the party, and he kept declining the request, while wondering how many times it had been for that day only. Once again, Shun denied that request and then suddenly heard an explosion in the far distance. On close inspection, it was disclosed that it was the task of the two twins. It was in line with another attack, where the twins threw something towards a little rabbit to take it down. The blast there was so sudden that those two girls were not able to keep their faces. Shun also wondered who the hell was that, the one who got killed by their own weapon. He was relieved that they were alive. Those two girls blushed and then decided to walk away after getting a glance of the protagonist. As a result, from that day, the twins kept following Shun when he went hunting. They stood far away and stared at him. Shun was calm, after thinking that they were not doing anything bad there. Among all of it, the most exhausting thing for him was to decline the invitations from the parties he was getting. The scene then changed to a few days later, and when the protagonist entered the inn that day, he was surprised by the noise around there. When he inquired about it with the inn lady, she told him that two of the kids had not returned since the last day, and the ruckus was about them being dead. Kango was seen screaming, asking the other student if he was saying that he was the one at fault. The other student defended the reason for him fighting with them after getting insulted and humiliated by them. Kango was not able to keep his calm and drew the gun right inside the inn and then ended up firing a bullet in the midst of it. On more clarification, it was disclosed that the bullet somehow missed something which the protagonist himself was protecting, covering. Shun was too angry when he saved the inn lady, and that man, being merciless, declared it was not what he meant, as he just wanted to scare that time. This time, Shun was in a bad mood, so he stood up, and then directly went off grabbing his collar and then smashed the man on the floor. That violence was because of two reasons, one of his cherished crossbow creaking, and the other of the innkeeper almost losing her life. Shun then coldly told him that just because he did not mean to, it was not like it did not matter. In the middle of the rough violence, those two twins arrived and informed both of them that violence was not at all good. However, this time, those girls were all worked up. Shun looked at them, and everyone asked if they were really alive. Finally, the reason for their behavior was disclosed by them by showing the odd they were before. Shun also identified that thing, and then realized that they observed him learning how to learn hunting. Another man from Kango's group arrived to stop the complete ruckus in between. As everything stopped for a while, the innkeeper also thanked Shun for the help earlier, and one other person there apologized to him. Shun asked that student why he was the one apologizing, as the one at fault was the Kango guy. That man was too disappointed to know that one of his classmates had involved an outsider like him in the internal conflicts. Shun also found it honorable of him, as the one who was the perpetrator just ran away from there thinking that he was not going to invite the protagonist to join the party ever again. The other student knew it from the start, as there were conflicts among themselves from the beginning, as the ones who were physically strong and with strong weapons teamed up. Shun knew it as it was natural because they were playing for their lives. That student continued that it was because of that the remaining started getting disgruntled, and as they knew of it, they started dividing people with equal fighting power into parties. With that clarification, Shun also realized that the twins were not fighting for them. Furthermore, the man told him that those were a bit weird, as they were like a separate existence in the class. First of all, for them, it was already difficult to cooperate with someone they did not understand, and because of that, they were finding it hard to learn about weapons too. Due to that, they got stuck on how to make parties, and as Kango said that the twins should be split, which was the reason why they argued. In the end, the twins just declared themselves that only the two of them were fine and they would be on their own for them. That declaration was something that turned the mood of the class to deteriorate and led to that mess. Shun too felt and said it out loud about the outsiders also having that kind of person. Students there were not able to understand his calling nickname and then again asked what was about him there. The man further asked him if he was from that world, while further asking if he had ever seen an outsider like him in the labyrinth. The questions continued, and he too inquired if they could possibly get out after reaching level 25, and then if they could trust God for that. Shun, being innocent, clarified to them that those were the guys he met there who were the first outsiders he ever met. Students were disappointed. However, Shun continued to tell them that a minister of the country was an outsider. That information was from Mulatto, so it could not be false anyhow. Students got excited and asked what the name of that man was. Shun clarified it was Juru Sakamatsu, and additional info was about his marriage there and having a girl. Classmates couples got extra excited to know about him being Japanese. Shun then further told them that it seemed to him that the other countries had some as well, but since he himself lived near the mountains, he did not know clearly. That was the complete info with him, and the student was good with that info for then only, as the priority was to return to the old world. But for then, they had to find a way to get out of there. The determination to aim for level 25 had been wound up for then. Students there were very prepared as they had bought most of the necessary equipment in the village, and then they could start exploring the labyrinth from the next day. As Shun was still thinking, that kid stood up and then told him he would want to welcome him to the team. However, there was no space available. Before he could even feel a little more guilt, Shun clarified that he had plans to stay in the plains for a month. Students there found it a little slow, and he clarified that the government had declared that orphans like him must stay in that maze for 3 years, so there was no way for him to rush to. The next question from him was about someone fixing the crossbow, which was broken. Before trying, those kids gave, and so Shun turned to the mistress and then suggested she use that broken piece as repair material or something. Something contradicting, as Shun himself said it was his treasure, to which the protagonist clarified that it was a gift from a person who brought him up, so it was a treasure for sure. The student again asked why he was giving it away then and not keeping it. Shun then told them that it was useless to have it, and it was wiser to utilize it to repair the wall. Everyone found it too humble, but when asked, he closed the topic, stating that it was nothing. Both of them shook their hands for the great introduction, and then Shun too wished them to have a good time in the labyrinth. As the next day fell, outsiders started entering the labyrinth, and they left the inn one by one. So soon in the end, the remaining ones were the twins and the protagonist himself, being followed by them still. From his observation, he realized that they were not just curiously observing him hunting, as they were even noting down the instructions. Both of them were even determining which prey they were going to hunt, and sometimes they would hunt in the safe areas where he had just finished hunting the prey. Shun knew it too that they were pretty weak. However, because they were weak, both of them put in effort and gradually hunted more and more prey. For that, he found it was a worthy task, and it did not look horrible. He was happy, leaving the twins with a lot of knowledge. Shun then clarified about his condition that for him, it seemed definitely that it was not wrong. At first he thought that it was an illusion, however, still staying at level 1, he could not remember any new skills or magic. MP recovery for him had turned from 1 point in 3 seconds to 3 points in 3 seconds already. The MP cost for shooting became 5, and accuracy had increased too. It seemed too that MP consumption from using the toilet had decreased, as it was 1 point in 3 minutes. Several changes were felt by Shun there, which included the probability of holding the body when swinging Bundukuzeri increasing, the physical abilities being all within the scope of the labyrinth boundaries, and experience being gained for all that purpose. Apart from that, Shun had gained 3 abilities too, which included the ability to grasp the terrain and the movements of everything while being self-centered. The second was the ability to perceive the eye towards oneself, and the third one was the ability to sense attacks directed at him. While he was thinking of realizing that, Shun was in range of an attack, with someone's gun pointing at him. This time too, the man attacking him missed the shot. Shun, being not even a bit interested, walked away from there, and Kango, who attacked him, was again pissed that he missed the shot again. As Shun reached back to the city, he headed directly to the old teacher and summoned him with a grandpa. That old hag asked him not to judge him by appearance, as he could be called God too. Shun was there to ask him if he could use the apothecary room that day, and the old man replied positively to it, and then asked why he was making potions for that day. Shun just thanked him and clarified that he was going to probably finish preparing by the end of that day. For the potion making, the table was filled with poison, antidote, wound medicine, anesthetic drugs, and smoke bullets. The old man was confused to think if he was hunting with those only. Shun then remembered that some restrictions had been imposed on him, and he had to solve them before entering the labyrinth. As he left from there, he reached the place. He remembered that the medicines he made were kept in the small side pocket, and VSS along with Bundukuzeri were easily inserted and removed, so there was no issue with it. Even so, the crossbow was gone. He just needed a dagger for then. Once again, when he was about to enter the inn, he remembered that there was one more thing that he needed. On the contrary, Kango was waiting with plans to ambush the protagonist once again. Things turned out differently this time, as when Shun looked at him, that man instantly collapsed. The reason Shun did that was to tell him that it was fine in the morning, but that man was not allowed to bother him when he was hunting at night. Shun was not there to kill that man, so he gave him an anesthetic too, and then declared to the stars there that it was time for him to hunt that big bird. At night, Shun was out with his VSS, while knowing that the bird always followed a certain route, so he already had a plan there, not so long, and the bird to arrive there. But Shun was waiting for that beast to arrive at a distance of 500 meters. He knew that it was going to be hard, but he was fine as soon as the bullet could reach. Finally, when the bird came in range, he took aim and then continuously fired a series of shots at that monster, delivering an average of 150 damage points with the attack. As soon as the barrage ended, Shun hid himself, and the bird was still searching for the location from where that barrage came. Shun hid while thinking that he was hiding for his ammo to replenish. As soon as the ammo replenished, he again stood up and aimed at the monster's head. This time, the average attack to the head was delivering damage more than the body attacks. Not so long, and the bird was in range of 200 meters, so it was not going to be any long when it noticed him. As soon as that bird looked at him, he took his way and then started running while grabbing the attention of that bird. He was running and managing to stay ahead of that monstrous bird. It was like Shun was dragging that bean to a particular location. The pit finally arrived, and that bird fell into the trap straight away. It was delivering some damage too because the traps set by Shun included poison stakes. In the Labyrinth testimony book, such kind of damage was called slip damage. The protagonist understood that to hunt a big beast wearing down its strength before it closed into melee range was very important, which was why he used plenty of poison and paralytic drugs. The continuous attacks were making the bird scream in despair. However, Shun did not fall into its trap, as according to the list of the monsters compiled by the elders of the temple for fees, it was disclosed that the ancient birds could release a scream that paralyzes anyone who hears it. That information was something that came from a level 30 outsider, the person who had successfully hunted that species. Shun was happy that he was lucky to have the ear guard, which was a reward obtained by clearing the labyrinth of darkness. The knowledge about all that was the only reason Shun decided to hunt that ancient bird. That thing worked, and Shun too thanked the old man, leaving the god alone for the credit. As that bird was able to get off the grasp of the poisonous trap, Shun started running because he had suspected that it would be like that, to not defeat that beast with just one move, which was why he had not only prepared one trap. The second trap was successful too, making the bird fall and scream out of pain and despair. As soon as it happened, Shun took the guard, thinking that the poison had quite an impact on them. Further, being sure that if he repeatedly fired and waited for his ammo to replenish, Shun could take it down from a safe distance. Finally, the task of the SS was complete, and so he vanished and then called for the Bundukyuzeri. Being an adventurer, Shun was never going to leave its body there. It continued for quite a time, and finally, the monstrous bird was down with its complete body and flesh. Shun was too exhausted, and when he looked at his status, he realized that the numbers there were so dangerous. Even though he had weakened it with poison and traps, the power it exuded with just those wings was something he had to counter. An experienced person told Shun that from the third bottle onwards, it was no longer effective, so still, there were a lot of rules that he did not know yet. Shun was thinking from the start that before getting deeper in the labyrinth, he had earlier made up his mind that he was going to defeat the ancient bird anyhow. In the middle of his self-talking, he heard the voice of those twins who were together asking him if he was planning to enter the labyrinth anyhow. Their stare was enough to make a kid pee in shorts. Shun too felt that it was the first time they were so close to him. However, those two twin kids were more excited about the big trophy victory Shun got in the form of that bird. As the girls were looking with cute, demanding eyes, Shun offered them to have as many feathers as they wanted because they were sellable. Yua and Yuna, being too self-centered, denied any kind of favors because they found it humiliating. Shun too took that seriously and moved on, but the scene changed as both of them screamed for it being just a joke. Both of them were ready to drink mud provided by him as they were completely broke with respect to money. Shun was again confused about that technical word, money. Even so, those twins were not ready to sell themselves. Shun realized that they were acting as being completely poor and then offered them the previous task of feather plucking. The twins agreed to it and then called him a true descendant. Shun was wondering if empathizing with others was a failure. It so happened that day and he decided to share the feather. The girls too introduced themselves to him as Yua and Yuna. Shun then offered them to pluck as many feathers as they liked, yet instructed them to touch it carefully as the blood was poisonous. The twins followed the command and realized that the feather was worth a lot of money. However, Shun was not stuck onto the feather only as he was aiming for more important ingredients. So he started cutting the bird's flesh, and as the blood drained, Shun realized that he should be more careful. If he got a little blood on him, the antidote would work, and if in any case it covered him, he was going to die in an instant. The first thing he took out of that monster was the giant bird's stomach. He knew that there was something as per the Magic Intel catalog because the monster was even able to digest that sticky monster. Those valuable items were disclosed to be the stones in the bird's stomach, which were about 3 large and small stones. As per him, that thing might not make sense for people under level 25, and furthermore, it may also not make sense unless they were an outsider. But even so, it looked to him that he had won the gamble there. One by one, he was taking all the gross items out of its stomach. Those girls were continuously staring at the protagonist again. Shun, being concerned, asked if something was wrong and if they had touched the blood. Then they should get the antidote as soon as possible. Instantly, those girls went on their knees and then started asking for his help. Shun inquired about it, so the twins told him that they did not have enough strength as their hands could only hold chopsticks. Shun realized that they were not even able to pluck one feather yet. Yua and Yuna were just embarrassed by it, so when Shun observed them, he could not believe, while looking at their bodies, that they were the same age as him, because their arms were so thin that they were about to break. In the end, Shun sighed and decided to pluck it for them and then help them carry it too. It really took him all day to make 5 round trips to the village, as they carried as much as they could until the sun went down. Shun thought that they would be exhausted halfway through, but the twins still tried to the end. At the village stores, the shopkeeper accepted it instantly, and the feathers were sold off for 10 silver coins each. Both of the twins were too happy after knowing that, and in the end, the share that belonged to the twins was about 550 silver coins, and as for the protagonist, it was more than twice of it. It was then when they reached back at the inn, and the innkeeper found it rare for them to be at that location, being the only ones, as she knew that the rebellious teenager seemed to have moved his hunting ground to the labyrinth too. She further asked if he was going to stay in that village, so Shun replied negatively to it, further thinking of leaving the next day. Before he could even complete, the 2 twins started screaming all of a sudden. So when Shun looked at them, both of them bowed in front of him to ask him not to leave them and help them. The protagonist too remembered the man's sayings about the twins being a little different in their class, being aloof. So Shun asked them why they did not leave with the other outsiders because, in his eyes, if they wanted to survive, they should have humbly asked to join the group of their friends. Apart from that, Shun found it better for them than walking away with a stranger like him. Both the girls denied it with a side move and then declared to him about their bodies being a wall and shield for them. Shun found it pretty disturbing, but then realized that their saying strategy would work as per the labyrinth rules. Those girls were continuously looking at him with gloomy eyes, and he found them to be someone thinking so much. The twins got confused, and so Shun, after a thought, asked them directly if they were ready to answer all these questions honestly. Both of them replied positively to it and decided not to hide something there. He first inquired about their stats, so when both of them disclosed about it, Shun realized that with that HP, if they got kicked by a hair, they would surely die. He realized that their SP was on the higher side, however, their HP was quite low. It was then when those girls asked him to ask about their EX, but since the protagonist did not even know the meaning of it, he realized that he had been so focused on training with the VSS and Bundu Kuzeri that he had not tried his summoning magic once. With that thought, Shun wondered if EX meant magic. Yua and Yuna then told him that it was a special power and it could be used once per 10 minutes. For Shun, it was for 30 minutes, but he wondered how he had to do it. Yua asked him to press his finger on his EX icon and an explanation would appear. Yuna then informed him to recite the skill name. As soon as he pressed the EX button, he was about to recall the 100th fear. Just then, both of them grabbed him with his bound hand and asked him to be careful as it was an attempted murder. The innkeeper too asked them about what happened, and they denied it, saying it was nothing. As for the twins' EX, Yua's was the holy shield, as it could call a glowing shield for protection, and moreover, it could heal someone. For Yuna's, it was the holy sword, and it could transform into a glowing sword that could be used for slashing, and moreover, it was a wide range. Shun realized that it was about defeating and attacking multiple targets at once. He then asked when he asked about the magic thing. The twins told him that it could restore HP and could increase defensive power. Shun was stunned to know that they also had healing and defense magic. It was then no wonder about how they survived so long with so little help. The next thing he was interested in was about the weapons that they used to explode something. It was disclosed that those were the XM84 and MK3A2, which blast in an extraordinary manner, including that, as they exploded, for a moment they could not open their eyes and see anything, including which everyone within a 2-meter radius would be shocked and die. That was good, however it was pretty much more than he had ever expected. Shun knew that both of them had very effective weapons. Still, there was something that mattered to him. It was the eye guard magic glasses and his ear guard magic pearl that he used in the giant bird battle. Those skills were clearly matching the weapons perfectly. When the protagonist wondered about it, he realized that it was something that the god had already foreseen and then decided to give him those magic circles. In the middle of all that, those girls called for him. However, he ignored it and then realized that the twins' abilities, weapons, and even their personalities were all incredibly powerful. For the others, who could not even cooperate, forming a party was hard, and using their weapons was inherently difficult. Shun knew that it was the only one, so after a long sigh, he declared himself the leader and then asked if they would form the party then. As per the rules, if someone becomes the leader of the team, they are going to see their teammates' HP. As per the journey, it was 4 hours from the village to the screen in front of the labyrinth entrance. Both the girls were a little slow on their feet, but their movements had gotten much better. Arriving at the location, the captain stopped them and then declared to get a closer look at their magic and weapons. He was convinced that the girls could use the skills well enough, as their offensive power was strong, and he had no criticism of their healing magic either. About the plan, he informed them that the basics would be the same as they trained, as Shun would attack first with his VSS from as far as possible. Moving ahead, as soon as the enemy approaches, Yua would hold the enemy in place with XN stun grenades so Yuna could aim for its legs with her MK3 grenade. In addition, he told them if there was an enemy that exceeded their expectations, they would use their EX abilities to hold out and maintain distance. The pattern would repeat continually every time. As soon as the twins heard him, they asked him what they would do with their swords. For them, those swords were specialized for cooking and fishing. Shun immediately denied them about using it. On the journey, they found that fool guy from earlier and then asked the protagonist to get his attention. Shun too remembered that the innkeeper told him that the team was heading to the hunting labyrinth for them. At that time, that fool took aim and then attacked a mole. The hit was effective, and so it was successfully taken down. Shun did not find it attractive as it was just an ordinary caterpillar, and even their crude attacks were going to bring it down anyhow. The one that Shun was interested in hunting was the black one with yellow muscles, as it was one of the rarest. Just then, that fool got attacked by a tanuki while being surrounded, so Shun felt the reason to pay his most attention to the caterpillar. He then gave a lesson to the girls that to avoid such mistakes, they were always going to pay attention to their surroundings while hunting. Finally, that pompous fool had run away, so it was also told by Shun that if they were in danger, they would escape to the inside of the labyrinth to recover. That team moved forward and then found a different colored tanuki amongst them. For Shun, it felt like the leader, so he decided to hunt it first. That prey was enough to be taken by a VSS hit, and so Shun took his guard to attack that shrimp. The more he was hitting with his VSS, the more those girls were screaming about the corpses piling up. The protagonist was confused to hear about how they were left behind as he had not hit them with the Bundukyuzeri. Instantly, that team ran to them, but he asked them to be careful. The protagonist thought of dismantling that and seeing what was going on. Just then, Yuna saw something and then asked Shun's attention to it, thinking if that was something that they were waiting for. That thing turned out to be a black caterpillar, at the same location where Kingo's team had hunted the caterpillar. Shun was happy that it finally appeared and then asked both Yua and Yuna to get ready for it. With that instruction, all girls used the ear guard to protect the ears and the eye guard to protect the eyes. The twins got those badges from the captain, as the captain could give them to the team as a loan. In addition, when team members use ear guards, they would be able to talk even when they were apart. That amazing feature would change their tactics significantly. Even so, Shun was not able to understand why both of them welcomed the ear guards so warmly. It was time for them to focus on the moment, so he asked them to move forward 10 meters as he was going to distract it so you could use the stun grenade. Shun too took his guard from a distance for the attack and then started raining his bullets on that bug, delivering damage with every hit. Soon that being started releasing the yellow gas. The protagonist understood it and then took out some potions out of the box. He handed them over to Yuna, stating that it was the antidote, so he asked her to drink it after throwing her grenade and come back. Yuna then had to hand it over to Yua, even if she did not find anything unusual. Post that instruction, Shun wondered if her grenade was going to work there. Yuna then ran ahead and dropped her stun grenade and then intently ran to her sister. As soon as she came back, she had the dip of the antidote, which even Shun did not know if it would work or not. The stun grenade was followed by a series of VS set attacks. The team then fell back a bit, while the captain told them to keep the plan the same as usual. For the second round, after gaining the distance, Yua ran and threw her grenade too with perfect timing. However, something unprecedented occurred, and she got paralyzed with her legs. First, the protagonist covered Yuna and ran off there, taking her. Yua decided to deliver her grenade in total support. Shun gave you a drink of the antidote and realized the next one to get was Yuna. As soon as Yuna delivered that grenade, she tried to run off there and was once again protected by Shun with the antidote. They needed healing magic from Yua for Yuna, and she offered it instantly. As things calmed, Shun realized that the bug's shell was peeled off, but it had not weakened yet. In addition, she told the kids to throw their grenades a little earlier that time, as it would keep the movements in check. Gas leakage from that bug had stopped too, but he was not able to understand the reason for it happening. In response, Shun again delivered a series of VSS bullets, so that monster, in response, threw something out of its mouth. As it was acidic, Shun remembered that even outside the labyrinth, some snakes release acids like that at the hunting ground in the mountain. But the one he was facing was on a whole different level then. The strategy of the grenades continued, followed by a series of VSS bullets. They in the end managed to blow off its head, yet that black bug had not fallen yet. Shun knew they had to do it once again. However, he could not right then as the twins were exhausted and his VSS needed a reload too. He had something planned in mind, so he asked both of them to be wary of their surroundings and then gradually step back while casting the defensive magic. The twins agreed to it, and Shun too felt that from then, he had hoped for some time to recover. As soon as he attacked it with Bundu, that bug again started releasing that paralyzing gas. In the middle of that wretched battle, Shun felt some presence, and then the girls told him that a pompous fool was approaching with his team there. Kengo was there with an extensive thought of serving that native right and taking care of the bug all by himself too. The reason Shun was not shooting at the bug was that he knew it was a threat. Kengo somehow managed to grab the attention of the bug, so Shun too ran to ask the girls if they were able to defend and recover. But when Shun came near them, both of them started healing the boss from the pain. On the other hand, the bug had already started its assault to deliver damage to the Kengo team. Others were already on the floor, and the one in the range of the bug's acid attack was Kengo all alone, being watched by the opposite team. The scenes then switched, where the team was presented with Holy Cross coins of 825 silver, 121 silver bars, 19 gold coins, and 8 gold bars. They got it after selling material from the Black Crawler. The twins were totally glittering in their eyes. That amount was something that he could not even count. The shopkeeper also told him that everything he had sold was precious material, and aside from it, it was just the second time that he had bought him the material. He further added that since foreigners up to level 30 come here, the hard scale, the venom, the meat, and the fangs that Shun bought were going to attract buyers right away. As the protagonist gazed at the attention of the twins, the shopkeeper further told him that lately, there was a huge Haruta too, so it was just a miracle to be alive fighting that. He completely ignored that talk, so it was disclosed that the twins were indulging in looking at the bundle of the money. Immediately, they asked Shun to split it, and then after dividing it thoroughly, he gave the twice share to the protagonist too, asking him to check. That money was enough to live leisurely for a while. Shun then noticed that his status rose a bit too, and further asked about both of them. Yuna then declared that she had learned detoxification, which impressed him too much. He was happy to know that earlier they had healing defense and then had detoxification. The twins were happy then as they did not have to drink the antidotes there anymore. Shun stopped them in their happiness and then told them that since they had got the money, and their abilities had increased too, in his eyes, based on the strength of Kengo's party that he had obliterated, he was assuming that they were able to fight the maze for them. There was an awkward silence all around for some time. Finally, the girls spoke a bit and reminded him about his instructions for safety. It was because they had seen what happened with the Black Crawler. Shun knew about it too through the priest's story and the illustrated handbook, but he did not know how strong its paralyzing venom and acid were. In the end, he thanked them for helping him take it down. The twins were also not ready to fight something to which they had no knowledge about, and so they finally declared that they trusted in Shun and would surely follow him. With the agreement, the protagonist told them that they would depart from there the next day. He then went back to get a bath, and when he thought of it, he remembered that the monster left a corpse behind without being restrained. He noticed that it was quite easy to dismantle it after. However, Shun did not see the stone that was supposed to be there. Further, as the head was blown off by VSS, he thought that the stone was destroyed right at that moment. That thing gave him a hypothesis that a corpse would be left behind if the stone was separated from the body. Yet he had so many mysteries about the maze. Even so, Shun was always prioritizing his survival. Post the understanding, he remembered about Kengo's group, feeling that they were not supposed to die. At that time, after their death, they dove right into battle, so they had not even time to think about anything else, and their bodies too disappeared without a trace. The twins too did not say a word either and were focused on their jobs. As they were not on the best of terms, they were still companions, and that came from the same place. Shun was sure that it was not like the girls did not feel anything about it, so he considered that it must be that he had not paid much attention to it. There, while looking at the skies, he felt that from then on, he would have to make decisions that would involve other lives besides his own, so he must be very careful. That man was sure that as the leader of his party at all costs, he was not going to let the twins die. As the day fell, Shun's team was there to go on the attack on the maze. During the journey, they easily dealt with the monsters outside the maze. The steel in front of the maze was for registration before entering the maze. When they arrived at that location and posted a count to 3, Shun fell into the labyrinth of darkness. He felt that it was the same freezing effect when he opened the bathroom door. Soon the darkness lighted up, and the god appeared, being finally happy on Shun's arrival. Both of them greeted each other for a long time. The god then told him that everyone was supposed to leave the tutorial plains in under a month. As Shun confirmed it, he further told him that it was his parents who told him that once he was in a new place, he must learn everything possible before leaving it. Also, Shun was thankful that he had learned a lot about fighting from there too. The god found it right too, as he had beaten the Misery Eater and the Evil Worm at level 1, so he was pretty amazed at his strength. Since that kid too prioritized the task, he asked him to register Shun for the maze first. He further thought of transferring the basic information about the maze directly to his head, and for the further special prize, he fixed the top part of the physical attributes, gun, sword, and magic, which would affect his magic circles too. Shun was still processing that, then told him about the heating of the Garuda stone to be traded for a magical tool. The god too remembered that once there was a foreigner who did that, and it must be the priest who had told him, and then clarified on the dependence on the size of the stone too. As soon as Shun presented it to him, that little kid found it huge and was totally shocked to see the size he had collected. It was not the only one, as Shun then presented him with the other 2 small stones, explaining them to be of the other teammates. The god felt that the priest must have told him to sell the stones at the stores inside the maze, but he was going to do it since he would get a cheaper price for it. However, he would only get the real deal when trading with the god. The god paid him a good price for it in real life, and provided him with the mystery robe for the po-poi stick, which he could use to freely store the luggage and take it away. The twins were also provided with it. For the trade of the Evil Worm Stone, he was provided with the Living Knight, which was going to be his summoning magic at the pace of the water horse. On further clarification, the god told him that his po-poi stick's storage capacity was pretty impressive, and everything stored inside the po-poi would be displayed in the status of his left-hand screen. With that clarification, Shun started looking at the status screen and found that below the gun, sword, magic, and magic circle, he got the icon of the po-poi stick. The god confirmed it, and he found that it was just a pretty blank square since it was empty, and if something would be stored, it would show what he had stored inside it. Shun then understood that he did not have to carry heavy luggage anymore, including the medicine, weapons, armor, and the food. He believed he had gotten a divine tool right after the tutorial plains like that, which was pretty awesome for him. The god had done whatever he wanted to do at that moment, so he finally used his magic again to send back the protagonist to the twins, while telling him to keep entertaining him inside the maze too. As soon as he reached back at the location, Shun asked the twins about everything being alright. Yua told him that many things had increased, but Yua's body was still the same. Shun's status had increased a lot on the screen as the magic circles had changed too. The twins knew it too that the god had changed their abilities based on how they were going to use it. Changes included that Yua's XN would decrease attack and Yuna's M key would decrease defense. Also, Shun's VSS ammo capacity had increased by 52. However, for Bundu Kyuzeri, only the weight of the chain had changed a bit. As the girls there were still searching for the ceiling and the walls, Shun wanted to rest a night to process the info in his head while being inside the maze for them. Just then, once again, the protagonist felt something approaching him in the distance, and then he alerted the twins. Soon he took out his VSS for a binocular use and then somehow managed to dodge a bullet which was pinpointed to his location. Shun immediately asked the team to run away from there. While running away, Shun was still wondering about the attack and then wondered about the range of the gun of that attack. As it was disclosed, a tank could be seen, where someone was discussing the protagonist running from there. The main character in that team realized that they were not just running, as their reaction was quite good. As the other man asked him to not praise someone from the natives and remember that they were on the same team. The binocular man then informed all others that Shun's team had noticed them and was headed directly for them there. Instantly, everyone went back to their positions, asking the aiming person to pinpoint it to the boy, as the native was the only one worthy right then. The shooter knew that he had not aimed for him, however he realized that at that range, and with their constant movements, he could not hit him. Even the girls there were running around being the decoy as an issue too. He too felt that the girls were acting a little strange, so it happened for Shun as planned. Yua acted as his shield, and he too fired at the team, pushing them onto the back foot. The girl used her attack and ended up blasting the fountain statue. As soon as the stun grenade blew up, they were not able to see anything, however, Shun was able to. As he got the perfect shot, Shun pointed it to the hip of that boy and snapped him on the ground while asking for continuous help. In order to make the student's body vanish, he shot it again and then ran away from there. Other team members were not able to understand what it was. Someone like him should be an easy kill for them. That boy was in such anger that he then decided to point his guns at the girls. Even the others tried to stop him, however it was too late for him. So as soon as he tried to take out his gun, Shun pointed and launched an auto hit of VSS. That student died too and then vanished in thin air. The last man was standing all alone with a shield. He was deflecting the gun attacks easily, so in order to close it easily, Shun used his Bundu-Kyuzeri and then launched it to grab the leg of that shielded man, making him fall on the ground. In response to the final blow, the protagonist sliced that man's throat. On further inspection, 2 more candidates were seen too, hiding behind the tank, wondering why something like that was normally going to take only 1 bullet to take the native down. That terror was not for long, as one of the twins again blew up a stun grenade right in front of their face, making them blind to move. Shun took that opportunity and then, with a little barrage of bullets, he ended their misery in cloudy smoke. He had felt that the guys were clearly targeting him since the start. Gorla was totally surprised by that review, so the protagonist himself told them to not think that they could not stand it. Both of them replied positively to it, stating that they could handle it. Post that battle, what only remained was the corpse of the shield bearer. Shun could not understand the reason behind it and then wondered if it was because of the chains. It felt to his imagination, however, still, he had the feeling that the body and the aura from that guy were different from the other gopher. As soon as he tried to touch the corpse, he saw that the corpse of that being was disappearing too. Even so, the way it disappeared was different from the others, and then wondered why it did not turn into light particles. The girl then grabbed Shun's attention to something, so when he gave it a look, it was disclosed that it was Tellermine 43. However, when he touched it, that anti-tank vehicle disappeared, which made him understand that the weapon was for him then. Something was still confusing because, as per the god's explanation, he knew that the divine weapons could not be stolen or traded. The god then appeared to tell him that it was true, but on explanation, he clarified that it was just his prank, so it was why he gathered foreigners and orphans in that maze. As when a foreigner kills another foreigner, stealing of weapons was not allowed, and they would not gain experience. On the other hand, when a foreigner kills a native, that was allowed, and that person would also gain experience. The explanation was quite surprising and relevant for the protagonist. That information was different from the explanation Shun had heard when he got summoned. The god then clarified to him that it was not for him and was for the foreigners. The kid too told him that since Shun was an exception after clearing the dark maze, and also as per the rules of the labyrinth, the foreigners got the explanation when they entered the maze, and the natives got guns when they entered the maze. Shun finally understood that the one bearing the shield was a native too, so it was the chance from the case of foreigners. The conclusion was that the natives like them were easy to steal guns from, and it was the real reason why Shun was being targeted. Shun then remembered why Kingo was continuously trying to get a shot on him. Before Shun could even think a bit more, the god told him that when a native kills a native, there was only a low chance that the opponent's weapons would drop. However, there was no experience even so. In the end, the foreigners and the natives could be differentiated using enemy search magic only. The native then finally understood that aiming to reach level 25 was really for them then. Onto that, the god added that once Shun would reach level 5, he would need consent from both the parties to begin any duel between humans, as he could no longer deliberately kill others. Shun then finally got the catch of all that. Furthermore, the disappearance of the foreigner and the native was different too, and in case a native is killed by a foreigner, it would become a strong monster who attacks foreigners. For the god, it was karma. However, for Shun, it was a complete nuisance and scary. In the end, it was just going to be that reaching level 25 was hard, and the explanation ended. Finally, Shun was back in the maze in front of his teammates. Just then, he was called by a skeleton who welcomed the protagonist to the first level of the maze. That place was the lowest level of the maze, also known as the City of Pioneers. The skeleton then told them that the largest building there was 3 floors, and additionally, There were also stores selling armor, tools, and living necessities, further telling them that if it was just his first time, then he should pay it a visit. Shun realized that it looked like a skeleton, but it was a monster, and the twins were too pleased by its welcome. As the protagonist felt that it was dangerous for him there, he tried to summon his VSS there, however, he failed. None of them were able to summon their weapons at that location, so the skeleton then told them the reason for it being harming forbiddenness in the city. Also, they could not even unsheath the sword they carried on their side. Inclusive of it, even with their bare hands, the moment they dealt with a certain amount of damage, they were going to pass out. Shun too then understood why the guys there attacked him outside the city, yet he was thankful that they were safe inside the city. The skeleton then told them with a flowchart that they must start conquering the maze from the underground levels, and once they got the badge of conquest from floor B10, they could get on to the second floor above ground, so finally they were going to target the third floor then. Also, the monsters underground were mostly weak ones, like goblins, kobolds, and clay golems, so it only required a little experience to deal with them. As soon as Shun heard of it, he started thinking and then asked them to head to the inn first, keeping other things aside. The twins were excited for food and shopping too. The skeleton also told them to be careful about the adventurers trying to kill the other adventurers outside the city. Shun just ignored it and then left from there. The City of Pioneers was a small city with only one road, but it still looked better than the starting village. Finally, they arrived at the inn and asked for 2 rooms. A fairy came to their help and guided them to their destination. Shun was confused about the creatures there. After arriving at the rooms, the fairy asked them to put their hands on the doors, which were magic doors and keys. Everyone left for their room, and Shun felt that the rooms also looked better than the ones in the starting village. As soon as he found a clock in the inn, he was stunned as that was something like a precious item, which was normally only found in the nobles' mansions. Yet he tried to calm himself down, and just then, the twins arrived at his door, asking him to go shopping. Not so long, they left for the task, outside the city, and then visited every kind of shop including the weapon store, general store, and the potion store. As they went to the potion store, Shun realized that it was his first time seeing those potions, so he was going to buy the healing potions and antidotes too. Yua was looking at the MP potions, and so Shun told them that earlier they could only buy as much as they could carry. However, since they had the poi poi stick, they could get as much as they wanted. During the shopping, they bought a lot of potions, and then Yua used her poi poi stick to store them easily. As they bought the torches and oil for underground exploration, Yua used her poi poi stick to store them. Both of them were too happy to say it and used it, but it was awkward for the protagonist to be even there. After leaving the shop, soon the girls came to the protagonist all lighting up in new dresses. So when Shun asked about the location, they confirmed it was the magic fabric store, further telling that it was made with a magic thread that fits the wearer and could also be cleaned and fixed. As Shun found those clothes pretty, yet he knew that they were not good for fighting. Finally, he decided to use the day he had planned for and then buy combat clothes and armor after it. So when they finally entered the shop, the shopkeeper welcomed them, realizing that they were the first customers for them, while telling them that all of their products were carefully selected and were made with magic. As the girls there were completely lost, Shun was searching for something light and which did not make a noise. The shopkeeper then showed them a section where everything was of the highest grade, but was sure that buying the whole set could be too much for their budget. In a blink of an eye, Shun clarified to her that he was going to buy the whole set. She was stunned and then requested her customer not to make jokes like that, as such items should require them to save up money from leveling. Even though when Shun asked about the price, she, being too much casual, informed him to be 10,000 Dijin. So for 3 people, it was going to be 30,000 Dijin. Finally, Shun presented to her 3 black rolls, disclosing that one of them was valued at 10,000 Dijin. When he finally asked about that being enough, the shopkeeper was completely in shock. Shun then clarified that he got money before coming to that city, and so in his eyes, it was nothing illegal in it. The shopkeeper agreed to it and then asked them to keep their money. The shopkeeper then finally realized her mistake and apologized on the spot. Moreover, she screamed that if she would take 10,000 Dijin for each set, she would need to prepare something of a higher grade, and so she finally went off for the task after asking for some time. As that girl left, both the girls instantly denied having any money and being broke. So the protagonist disclosed that he would pay for both of them, as he had gotten the bigger split anyways, and also because the good equipment would be better in the long run too. That motivation was enough for the girls, and they were determined to pay him back too. Just then, They could hear the scream of the shopkeeper telling that she had got it ready. Also, while handing them over, she told them that except for the knight's set underclothes, everything was a blood-packed item, and so she requested them to drop a bit of blood onto the magic circle inside. When the girls started to wear the suit, she told them that the knight's undershirt and pants could be worn normally. Also, if they wore the blood pact, they must wear all other items. So when they were finally able to wear it, they could just chant to equip or unequip them as they would. There were a lot of items in that suit, and as per the shopkeeper, they were the best they could get with that money. One more of its specialties was that with the dig and claw bracelet, they could create a magic barrier right on the spot by simply extending their arm forward, which would be floating, and so they were not going to feel any weight. The girls were too much excited while using it. As when Shun put on the headband, he felt that it was normal. However, as per the shopkeeper, he could end up protecting his complete head with that. Also, in addition to that, every item was coated with an anti-smell and anti-dirt magic. Also for it, they were not going to be stolen. It was enough for them, so they decided to leave the shop, and the shopkeeper wished them a safe and smooth journey. During the way back, Shun was telling the girls that he wanted to talk about the strategy when they got back to the inn. In the midst of it, they were noticed by a group of other people, and they shocked Shun's team like a plague. Shun saw them and then asked if those were the guys from the former companions, as he had expected that there were still some on the floor. He then asked them if they were really fine not talking to them. For the girls, what all mattered was Shun only. As they went back to the inn, Shun told them that since they counted each other as natives, they must keep their guard until they reached level 5. He knew too that there would be many foreigners on the surface floors, so if possible he asked to clear those floors quickly. It was the reason why Shun wanted to clear the underground floors several times, so they could defeat the strong enemy. Shun then told the real reason that he was too worried about taking them with him. The twins denied it, stating that he was going to be fine in the fight, and the second reason that even though their level had not changed, their abilities had surely increased. That was a firm characteristic for companions, so all three of them bumped their fists in acceptance of the team. When the girls left, Shun felt really exhausted. That included exhaustion from fighting off the ambush, information from the god, a new city, and spending 30,000 digin on shopping. Shun then thought of using the toilet before heading to bed. As he used that skill, the bathroom gate appeared. It seemed to him like that door had changed its appearance, so when he finally entered the bathroom, he was completely shocked about the appearance change inside of it from interior to the facilities. As the scene changed, the protagonist was calling for the living knight to kill that kobold for him. It was then that their conquest of the underground maze began. As the skeleton said, the monsters there were quite weak, so their levels did not rise, but instead he got to practice his new abilities and work with his party. On the 3rd day, they were on floor B1. However, just on the 6th day, they were on floor B2. By the 9th day, they were at floor B3. They were moving so fast that on the 12th day, they were on floor B4. Throughout that time, the most useful items were the poi stick, and for Shun, it was the bathtub. It was more useful than weapons after being extracted. With their continuous movement, finally, on the 15th day, they had reached the level 4 limit and floor B5. What appeared in front of them was a flaming armor minotaur. It was definitely a strong enemy for him. Instantly, the protagonist told the teammates to cover their eyes and ears, along with their helmets. When that monster finally came up for the attack, he thought of using the living knight, holy shield, holy sword, and everything all three of them could. The battle went long with that flaming beast, so in the end, they somehow took it down while preserving the body. The flaming minotaur was then sent back to the poi stick. As soon as it was completed, both the protagonist and the teammates were able to learn about the continuous healing magic. Upon further clarification, it was disclosed that the twins got continuous healing magic, mid-range magic, and heat resistance. Shun, on the other hand, got heat resistance, water cooling, and hiding nest. Shun realized that they had gained a lot from that one fight. However, they were still at level 4. Although it was a strong enemy, it was not that strong. Even so, when he was about to tell the girls about the same, he turned and found out that the girls had suddenly fallen asleep. Shun gave those girls a firm smile and then used his palm to hydrate the area of their surroundings. The girls found it cool, as if their skin were hydrated. Shun had learned that skill of water cooling, which was very useful for him. Although for Shun, it was possible that there was a small chance that there would be enemies stronger than the flaming armor minotaur. The chances of it were slim, however, he understood that it would be hard to encounter such monsters. In their adventure ahead, they finally found a strong enemy. It had a nose like an elephant, and the twins told Shun that the thing was huge as well as wiggly too. Upon verification, it was disclosed to be a leech of 15 meters in length. Shun wanted to check the Goblin Square again before returning to the city, but he could not believe that it was there. The girls were asking to leave it, but the protagonist was determined to kill that being all by himself. Shun then started explaining the plan. With the terrain there, they could just use Yua's XM to lure it into the open, which would leave them with 3 possible reactions: either bounce up, extend its body, or release its mucus. Finally, they would use the kings to block the way and then deal with it together. The twins were worried about the step when that being knocked the living knight down. Both of them were asking the protagonist not to get on the back of such a monster. Shun somehow managed to calm them down and told them that he had a plan. Outside the maze, there was a monster called the Abyss Leech that looked like that, and that thing was scared of fire since it was weak against it. Apart from that weakness, it did not feel pain, poison was ineffective, and its mucus was toxic too, which was an impressive survivability, but they could turn things around with something they had. In an instance, he took out the anti-vehicle bomb and decided to make a path. The girls kept declining it. As they planned and went ahead, they were not prepared for what happened afterward. Despite knowing it was a long fight, Shun did not expect it to end like that. Finally, when they came out of the floors, the skeleton welcomed them, wishing them a long time no see. It had been about a month since the skeleton had last seen them, and he had thought that they had cleared the underground floor and left for another city. Finally, that skullhead asked the question of the moment about their exhaustion. Those overly exhausted beings then told him that they had been in an endurance fight that lasted for a complete 20 days. To summarize the fight, on day 1, although they successfully drove it into an arrow path, the living knight was instantly destroyed by a wiggle of that monster. However, stalling it with fire was much more effective than Shun had anticipated. Later, an all-out fire was created by the Minotaur's flaming armor that they had stored in the poi stick. After that, they took turns hitting the monster heavily and took advantage of their fever time from Shun's 100 fear. So while the giant mosquitoes were sucking the monster's blood, every attack on the monster dealt 999 damage. They mostly repeated that strategy until the 4th day, but everything finally changed on the 5th day. The Abyss Leech's black tentacles appeared out of nowhere and attacked them. There were 2 on the 10th day and 3 on the 15th day. Although their attacks were not strong, by the 19th day they had accumulated stress and exhaustion. Yua got knocked out by Yuna's grenade. Everyone was in great danger. But then on the 20th day, finally, after those hellish days, they rose to level 10 instantly. Again, they got a lot of benefits out of that battle. So once again, when he went back to the palace, Shun realized that the fight was tougher than the results were worth it. As the scene changed, some group had finally reached the 4th floor, where they encountered the boss. A girl from the team was still concerned about whether they should not try to raise their levels while saving money for new equipment before fighting it. Another man agreed, feeling that they should upgrade their equipment as everyone was still wearing the cheapest gear. They were discussing heading up while asking if it was hard for them, why it was not for the twins. They were feeling totally concerned about them as they were partying with a native. On the other hand, Shun's team was going to face that monster all by themselves, and Shun was leading them the way. It just took them a short time to kill that monster with an instant kill. None of the members there were able to understand what had happened. Shun then told them that it was good that they could get instant kills on enemies there, and then asked them to go to the stone steel to register for hunting strong enemies. As they went for the registration and got out of the palace, everyone was left in shock. Once again, the protagonist was summoned to the god's place, where the little god was too confused and then asked if Shun was not finding it weird. Shun was confused once again and then asked if he was talking about the Abyss Leech. God denied it and then told him that even the flaming minotaur before was something to be concerned about, because it was a monster that normally appears on the 10th floor or above, and the leech was actually a dimensional eater, a rare monster on the 95th floor. Apart from that, God was shocked at the thought and then decided to give him another prize for his bravery. The god quickly decided to elaborate that the prize for clearing the 5th floor was armor. But since God knew that the equipment he was wearing then had better abilities, he was going to raise his luck instead. That meant that for beating an enemy over 10 levels, his stamina would be raised, and for beating an enemy over 90 levels above his, every basic stat of his would be raised too. Also, the prophecy of Shun's EX skill was raised beyond its limit, so God had to hide it from him, and the reward for reaching level 10 was an increase in his magic powers. Also, God offered him a trade. If Shun turned in the Minotaur's flaming armor, he could choose between fire magic, a cloak with fire attributes, or a bow with fire attributes. Shun instantly decided to take the fire magic. The last thing was about trading in the dimensional eater materials. As soon as that was also completed, God stated that it was everything and then sent him back, clarifying that he was going to make the monsters stronger for them. As soon as it happened, Shun was teleported to the 5th floor. A man there instantly recognized Shun's team, but Shun did not know him. The man then clarified that there was a group that fought back the bad players hunting natives in the square on the 1st floor, a mixed party with natives and foreigners, and then confirmed if those were the same. Shun had really seen something behind, and then asked if he was a foreigner. That man replied positively, while asking if he was going to stay in his team along with those guys as he was the Iron Fist. Furthermore, that man had arrived at that location 5 years ago and was the 51st generation. Shun was too confused to hear that, so that man finally clarified that people did not age in that maze. Before Shun could even process it, that man jumped and asked him if he could tell him about being there and whether the rumors about foreigners outside the maze were real. Once again, Shun had to tell the complete story to him, and when he understood, he thanked the protagonist about it. Further telling that in order to return his favor, he told them that from that floor onward, there would be monsters transformed from the natives, so they were going to be really strong. Another thing to be concerned about was that they were a team with just 3 persons. The man then asked them what their party name was. Shun said that he did not have any, however, the twins then raised their hands and suggested a party name. Some time then passed where they were continuously discussing the name they were getting. Finally, that adventurer took his leave, wishing them to meet again in the city if they survived. The named adventurers were too happy, and Shun asked those little girls to take care of him. It was then when it became an unprecedented list of achievements for the named adventurers. However, something was waiting ahead, which even the god had not predicted.